Another hopeful dimension I found in the encyclical is the Pope's acknowledgement and almost honoring of scientists, NGOs, civil society people who have been working on this agenda assiduously, often below the radar screen, often with their information suppressed, or as he said, manipulation of their information. And yet the Pope is acknowledging indirectly that the Church has not always been at the forefront of the environmental movement. In many cases is a Johnny-come-lately to the movement, and he acknowledges this subtly. And one of the great groups that has been working on climate change is 350.org. And it's wonderful that we have here a representative of 350.org. Bill McKibben in the United States has been so dedicated to advancing this, but also involving young people in this amazing movement of international concern and advocacy. And this has led to not only Bill McKibben, but Gus Speth of Yale University and others being arrested in front of the Obama White House. Ultimate insiders in Washington finally saying, we have to put our lives on the line. And so it's wonderful to see both the Pope acknowledging those contributions, but also to have Atiya Jaffar here with us today representing 350.org. Just a little more background on Atiya. Atiya joined 350.org as a contracted digital organizer for the summer, and she's developing 350's in Canada's outreach plan, social media strategy, web content, and blog in the lead up to the upcoming March for Jobs, Justice, and the Climate, taking place in Toronto on Sunday, July 5th. And I imagine a lot of people here will be in that number on July 5th. So thank you for that wonderful organizing. Atiya is also providing digital support for partners and allies participating in our national We Greater Than Tar Sands Day of Action. Tar sands, oil sands. I like to say toil sands, bringing both the tar and the oil together. Anyway, so the We Are Greater Than Tar Sands Day of Action that will take place on Saturday, July 4th. In addition to working with 350.org, Atiya is currently part of the Economic Literacy for Environmental Leaders course organized by the Sustainability Network at the CSI. As well, Atiya has completed a master's degree at the University of Guelph. Her thesis assessed the relationship between the environment and Indigenous sovereignty movements in Canada. So please join me in welcoming Atiya Jaffar.
Thank you. I think I'm the most underdressed and underqualified member of the panel, but I'm really honored to be here today. Before I begin, I would like to acknowledge that we're gathering here on the traditional territories of the Mississaugas of Credit River, the Huron-Wendat and Petun First Nation, as well as the Seneca. So acknowledging that with respect and recognizing that our struggle for climate justice is also a struggle for Indigenous sovereignty. So I'm here representing a youth voice, and youth have been really actively engaged in the climate justice movement. At the most fundamental level, I think the youth climate justice movement in Canada recognizes that our incumbent systems have created a society where we have a really small group of people profiting from really destructive industries that are essentially wrecking our climate. And we're also recognizing that as a result of this wreckage of the climate, the people that are suffering the most, and disproportionately so, are some of the groups that are most vulnerable in our world already. So this includes Indigenous peoples and people of color communities across the world, especially in the Global South. So giving examples today, this would include communities in South Asia that are currently being devastated as a result of really severe heat waves that are occurring that have already claimed thousands of lives in India and Pakistan. In addition to that, I think Andrea spoke to this as well, Indigenous communities that are really on the forefront of experiencing the harms of extractive industries such as fossil fuels. So an example would be the Athabasca Chippewa First Nation that are just downstream of the tar sands and have experienced really high escalating rates of cancer as a result of exploitation in the tar sands. So really, what we're calling into question here are the economic systems that allow these kinds of injustices to happen. And what's been really exciting is that this call for climate justice has been echoed by the Pope. In the encyclical, it says that the idea of infinite or unlimited growth, which proves so attractive to economists, financiers, and experts of technology, is based on the lie that there is an infinite supply of the Earth's goods, and this leads to the planet being squeezed dry at every limit. And the Pope very effectively talks about, and others have spoken to this as well, the fact that we do need to experience a dramatic paradigm shift in the way that we perceive economic growth. And this has been quite exciting. As Naomi Klein put it, this is a really strange time. A papal encyclical is generating almost as much excitement as a Beyonce album. And honestly, it really is, because we're finally having a much needed discussion about climate change and the root causes. But once we've identified the root causes, it's also really important to take action, because we know the most evil things in the world don't result as a result of evil people. They often result as a result of others not doing anything about it. Once we've identified what's wrong, we need to take action as a result to rectify what's wrong. Currently, we see that youth across Canada are engaged in fossil fuel divestment campaigns across university campuses. And this campaign, it's a global campaign, and essentially the foundational premise is that if we know that it's wrong to wreck the planet, then it's certainly very wrong to profit off of that destruction. And currently, universities across the world are doing that, and institutions other than universities as well, by investing their endowment and pension funds in fossil fuel companies, in oil, coal, and gas, companies that effectively have access to 3 times the amount of carbon that we can burn before we approach catastrophic and irreversible climate change. So in order to really address this problem, we really have to address the power structures in place that are creating this problem. And when it comes to the fossil fuel industry, it's really a matter of taking away the social license of these industries, and divestment is a really important tool in order to accomplish this. We've also seen that cities have taken the lead in this movement. We see Seattle, Berkeley, San Francisco, Portland, all municipalities that have divested from fossil fuels already. And in addition to that, perhaps not very surprising, is that there's also a lot of leadership from faith communities on this front as well. Across the world, 82 religious institutions have already committed to divesting from oil, coal, and gas, from fossil fuels. And we see that with all sorts of well-known institutions, including the United Church of Christ in the USA, a national church, as well as the Trinity St. Paul's United Church right here in Toronto. This is a crucial place of leadership for faith communities in the fight against climate change. The first and most important step that we can take is to ensure that the institutions that we're affiliated with aren't profiting from the destruction of the climate. And certainly I'm turning to Pope Francis, who's become the most popular advocate for climate action, to really see if he'll be a trailblazer once again in moving the Catholic Church towards divesting from fossil fuels. As we all know, 2015 is a really important year for climate change, not just because the climate justice movement has gained all sorts of new advocates, but also because we're really at the brink of change right now. As we know, in Paris this December, the world's leaders are going to convene for the most important round of international climate negotiations in this world's history. And we really, at this point, have to make sure that they are steered in a productive direction that actually results in meaningful action on climate change. And in order to do this, we've seen repeatedly that politicians are not leading the way, and when that happens, it's really up to us to lead the way. And of course, I'm going to speak to the March for Jobs, Justice, and the Climate because I'm planning that right now. But that is a really important tool as well. I feel as though we're at a point where we have all sorts of advocates, where we've told the story repeatedly. In order to actually see things move forward, it's time for us to mobilize. It's time for us to convene. It's time for us to really communicate that inaction on climate change is unacceptable. So that's why I am marching on July 5th in downtown Toronto. We're convening at 1 p.m. At Queen's Park and marching to Allen Gardens. This is happening right before the Pan-American Summit on Climate Change, where subnational governments from North America and South America are gathering to discuss subnational initiatives to address climate change. So it's really important to communicate in the lead up to Paris, in the lead up to the Pan-American Conference on Climate Change, that we the people are ready for meaningful action. And this is one way that we can lead. And we certainly have faith communities leading the way on this front as well. We're going to have a multi-faith hub as part of the march. They're going to hold a celebration prior to the march to really take leadership of faith communities coming together to demand climate action. They're also going to convene afterwards for a multi-faith iftar taking place after the march, because the march will take place during the month of Ramadan, which we're in right now. So thank you very much. I'm excited for question and answer period.